Despite casualties on the front lines, the Buffalo Bills won the Battle of New York. They now face an even bigger test this Sunday inside the NFL.
I'm Brian Burwell. In this week's cover story, we'll take a look at the most prolific receiver in Bills history, Andre Reed.
And I'm Peter Gogolak, and this is my brother Charlie. We used to kick in the NFL. Today, we still get a kick out of each other. Stay tuned.
This Sunday, Buffalo hosts one of the biggest games of the year. Joining us to preview the Bills-Dolphins matchup will be Bruce Smith and Marv Levy. And now from Buffalo, home of the first-place Bills, inside the NFL, professional football's most informative hour with Len Dawson, Nick Bonacati, and Chris Collinsworth.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. This week we're coming at you from Buffalo, New York. You know, this area is known for one of the most breathtaking sights in the entire world, Niagara Falls. We're shooting this show from rich Renaissance Niagara. We are in the Research and Development Department of Rich Products. This atrium, believe it or not, has a scaled-down replica of the Niagara Falls area.
Lenny, Rich Products has had a real impact on the Buffalo community. They not only employ 5,000 people, they own the Buffalo Bison's minor league team. They're trying to get Major League Baseball here for Buffalo in the stadium where the Buffalo Bills play. Yes, it's named after the Rich family.
But the family that plays in Rich Stadium was dealt a serious blow last week when they lost Jim Kelly, the top-rated quarterback in the entire National Football League. And now the Buffalo Bills are going to have to go into this week's game against the Miami Dolphins, a game that will probably decide not only the divisional championship, but home field advantage as well, without their emotional leader.
Well, it was a very difficult blow for Buffalo, but they do have a quarterback waiting in the wings who has proven he can get the job done. Frank Reich last year started 3 ball games because Kelly went down. When you take a look at this graphic, you can see he was perfect. 3-0, and one of those victories came against the Miami Dolphins. When you take a look at his individual stats, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Hey, that's not too shabby.
Lenny, if Frank Reich had not shown that he could win, Buffalo would be in trouble, and they would be underdogs in that game against Miami on Sunday. But this team will rally around Reich. Thurman Thomas will be featured, and Thomas will take the pressure off this young quarterback.
Well, I agree. I think Frank is a very capable quarterback, but you can't sit on the bench for 14 straight weeks and expect to play at your top form. But the one thing the Buffalo Bills do have going for them with Frank Reich is the fact that he can really run that no-huddle offense, really every bit as well, if not better than Jim Kelly. And that's something the Buffalo Bills offense is really featuring right now.
You know, I know what Jim Kelly is going through. It happened to me. Same type of knee injury, same leg, same way it happened. I was out for 4 weeks, and what happened? Our team, the strength of it took over the defense, and they just turned it up a notch or two. But the important thing is the Chiefs won the Super Bowl that year. In the NFL, it takes more than excellence to win a championship over a grueling season. You need depth and survival. Now comes the real test for the 4 division leaders who saw their quarterbacks succumb to injuries last week.
Blanketed by an icy rain and temperatures in the low 30s last Sunday, the Meadowlands featured what Bill Parcells likes to call giant weather. But it was the Buffalo Bills, 4-11 in December games under Marv Levy, who seemed at home.
I'd rather have snow.
Huh?
Between me and you, I'd rather have snow.
I don't care. Whatever. Just soon play. Whatever it is.
Right.
Supposed to play whatever kind of weather. It's the way this game is meant to be played outside.
The sun will be out soon. Huh? The sun will be out soon.
Yeah, right.
The sun was only wishful thinking for the Giants as the Bills were focused on turning Sunday into payday.
Today's a hitter's game.
Up front,
Let's
baby.
show them what we got. Huh? All right. Good luck to you today. Good luck to you today.
The Bills more than made their presence felt. But instead of folding, the Giants simply changed tactics.
They're holding the ball deeper than they've been doing before. They're playing Ben back on us all the way because they know we run well.
To counter the speed and strong upfield rush of the Bills' defense, the Giants began using deeper handoffs. With Buffalo defenders caught across the line of scrimmage, Giant blockers simply had to wall off the Bills and allow Rodney Hampton to find his way.
Hampton cuts back through left tackle. Hampton gets to the 40-yard line, the 35, to the 30, 25.
Hampton finished the day with 105 of New York's 157 rushing yards and set up the Giants' only touchdown.
Handoff. O.J. touchdown.
With a 7-0 lead to protect, the Giants knew what to expect.
Look, same thing as we talked about before now. On the zones, inside guys, okay? Thomas, McKellar, Reed, whoever the three inside people are, they're the big guys, okay? Under center, be alert on the sub run, okay? Reed on the crossing patterns, take them.
Kelly passes a relief on the left side on a screen pass. It is complete to the 30. Big break. 35-40, 45-50. The Giants are going to have to hustle to get to him inside the 30. Knocked out of bounds by Williams.
My kind of game, baby. 48. 3 yards in the cloud of dust. Let's have it.
A run to the left corner and cutting back. Thurman Thomas dives in. Dropping back, looking, throws, and it is caught by Reed, and he's in for the score. Yes! Yes!
But as quickly as the Bills took control, the advantage swung back to the Giants when Jim Kelly became the first of the weekend's KO'd QB.
Kelly is hurt. He is hurt horribly.
And holding his left knee.
No, don't do that, Tom. Don't do that.
Jimmy, hold on a second. Tell the guy we need the cart over here.
What? Don't let him, if you feel comfortable with that gun, don't let him come out. No. I'll tell you what.
Kelly's departure triggered a change in strategy for both teams.
Make a good first play. You know, I was wanting naked there. I think it would have been a play. Because they're really coming across now on the runs.
Without Kelly, Buffalo was left without its deadliest punch. But before the Giants could capitalize, they were dealt a blow equally as devastating.
Sims is down and getting up slowly. Sims is starting to limp off the field here. It's a first down for the Giants. Now we'll get Jeff Hostetler.
Sims' injury put the teams back on equal footing and left the Giants unable to convert on 2 late-game chances.
Shoot by Ingram, and a bad snap from center. Hostetler falls on the ball. Back to throw. Brooks, and he throws, and it is incomplete, and the Bills will get the ball and win the game. He tried to hit Troy Kyles. The Bills are going to win it at Giant Stadium.
Yes! 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 Bills #1!
The Detroit Lions are accustomed to going down for the count. But against Chicago, the Lions answered the bell like heavyweight contenders, and they delivered a knockout blow to Bears quarterback Jim Harbaugh, who suffered a dislocated shoulder that will sideline him for the remainder of the season. On Sunday night, the torch was passed to backup Mike Tomczak, and he was burned by a fired-up Lion defense that had entered the game ranked 28th in the NFL. Ultimately, third-string quarterback Peter Tom Willis threw for the game's final touchdown, but by then it was much too late. While Chicago required 3 signal callers, Detroit needed just 1, Rodney Peete, who passed for a career-high 4 touchdowns.
Left and fires long. Oh, wide open Johnson. Caught Tampa. Touchdown.
Rod Peete back to throw. Peete in the pocket. Lines up. Rainbow deep down the right side. Terry Greer ahead of the field across the 25.
The Lions had bared their fangs like vicious jungle beasts. While last weekend's action suggested that it was a jungle out there for quarterbacks, Kansas City's Steve DeBerg intended to show that the feeding frenzy was nothing more than a passing fancy. And passing fancy is just what DeBerg did when he saw a wide-open J.J. Burden.
Up in the pocket. He looks long. He'll arch a spiral. Down the middle. He's got a receiver at the 15, the 10, the 5. Touchdown, J.J. Burden.
But in the third period, DeBerg was sidelined by a broken finger on his non-throwing hand. He eventually returned to the game, but he was no match for Warren Moon, and neither was Kansas City's defense. Moon made the Chiefs secondary look foolish, and by the end of the day, he had nearly made history. The Houston quarterback passed for 527 aerial yards, the second highest single game total in league annals, and only 27 yards shy of Norm Van Brocklin's all-time record set back in 1951. In a victory that left the Oilers tied for first in the AFC Central, Moon threw for 3 touchdowns.
Moon, 3-step roll near side, sets up, throwing down him. Tony Jones, touchdown!
Back to pass, Moon looks right, looks left. He's hit. He breaks the tackle, throws down the middle, caught on a leap by Jeffries. The 40, the 50. It's a foot race to the 40. He's chased to the 30. He's gone. 20, 10, 5, touchdown.
On a day when QBs were KO'd with alarming frequency, Warren Moon was still standing tall. In fact, only one quarterback in NFL history has ever stood taller.
The Kansas City Chiefs need some help if they're going to win their division. One coach who will not need any assistance is the Bills' Marv Levy. A Buffalo victory on Sunday would assure the Bills a 3rd straight AFC East title. Earlier, I had the opportunity to chat with the architect of the winningest team in the AFC over the last 3 years, Buffalo's Marv Levy. Coach, I'd like to take you back to that Saturday game against the Giants. You're going along very well. Your quarterback, Jim Kelly, is having a great year. All of a sudden, he goes down. He's in pain, and I'm sure it was obvious to you that it was serious. What was going through your mind at that moment?
Well, at that particular moment, Lenny, as dire as you know the situation might be, and there is a sinking feeling that I certainly feel in my stomach. You're so immersed in the game, you just realize you have to get your other quarterback ready, and even though I checked 2 or 3 times during the course of the game to see how Jim was, I didn't have the opportunity to really reflect on my feelings then. We certainly did after the game, and realized that there's a lot of adjusting that needs to be done.
Well, let's talk about your backup quarterback, Frank Reich. Last year, Jim Kelly went down. He started 3 ball games. You went 3-0, but you utilized the running game a lot more. 600 yards rushing in those 3 games. Can we look forward to Thurman Thomas running the ball more this week?
Well, he may run the ball more. He ran 21 times last week. Some of them were hard yards. But, Lenny, I think we have a bit more diversified attack than we had a year ago. We have more players who are capable of stepping in and really giving us a lift. James Lofton has been added to our team. There's been the emergence of a young tight end, Keith McKellar. Thurman has been integrated more into the passing game. Donnie Smith, a Plan B acquisition, certainly helps that. I think you'll see balance in our attack, probably more so than what was the situation when Frank had to step in last year.
Also, let's talk about, your backup quarterback, Frank Reich, as opposed to Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly utilizes the no-huddle offense very, very well. Are you comfortable with Frank and letting him do that?
I feel Frank can operate it well if we elect to do so, if we elect to use him in that way. He's a very bright young guy. He's on top of all of our game plans. We've used the no-huddle for a variety of reasons this year, Lenny. Sometimes we feel an opponent might be thin on defensive linemen, hope we can tire them out. The opening game, we use it as an element of surprise, but it's not an all-the-time thing for us, and there's no special mystique about it. We'll use it. It's a tactic, but it's only one thing we do, and I feel Frank can execute it.
All right. You're 12-2. You haven't clinched your division as of yet. Some of your players are saying this is the biggest game of their career. Are you downplaying this, or are you saying, hey, that's right?
No, I'm not downplaying it. I think it is the biggest game of the year, certainly, and probably the biggest game of their career for many of the players, maybe coaches too, to tell you the truth. But once acknowledging that, we want to get our mind and attention on preparation. Emotion is important in a game like this, but also attention to preparing during the week for what your opponent's going to do and what we're going to do.
Hey, you don't think you're snake bit, do you? Because there have been times when you're going along very, very well, and all of a sudden something bad happens to you. Last year, for example, Ronnie Harmon dropping that pass in the end zone.
Well, that's what football's all about. Everything good doesn't happen all the time. That's why games are close. That's why it's hard to win a championship. And you and I were talking before we went on camera. I remember when a quarterback at Kansas City went down with a knee injury, Lenny, very well, and they won the Super Bowl.
And I guess that's why coaches get ulcers worrying about games like this. Congratulations on a great season so far. We're looking forward to a great game this week.
Well, so am I. Thank you.
I've known Marv since he was a head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, and there are two Marv Bleevies. One you just saw. The other you're going to see on Sunday, a very tense and a very competitive man on the sidelines. Hey, I'm sure you're familiar with the song, All I Want for Christmas Is My Two Front Teeth. Now, while this catchy children's tune could have been written by any one of a number of NFL players, if you took a peek at their Christmas wish list, I assure you that their two front teeth would not be at the top.
Was the night after Monday, and all through the league, teams had to wonder what more could Joe need. With nary a blink came the answer, but quick. Why, the game's best record and home field at the Stick. To defeat San Francisco is only made harder by record-long runs, not by Craig, but by Carter. To displace old St. Nick in this of all seasons is a pretty tough trick. One's got to have reasons. His name is Montana. Undaunted he throws. How his passes are caught is how far San Fran goes. If the Niners continue to force teams retreat, they may get their Yule wish, a nifty three-peat. Once the Vikings answered to the call of the wild, but these Norsemen have become the wimps of the wilderness, having lost 8 straight games away from domed stadiums. Needing a victory against the Bucs to keep their playoff hopes alive, Minnesota rallied behind quarterback Wade Wilson.
Back. Now is Wilson looking to throw deep down the left side. He's got Hassan Jones at the 35, at the 30, the 25, the 20. He's down to the 10, the 5. Touchdown! A 75-yard completion.
Wilson passed for nearly 400 yards. His arm, however, is a sawed-off shotgun, which possesses great power, but also erratic aim. The Bucs, playing their first game under interim head coach Richard Williamson, intercepted 4 of Wilson's majestic passes. Tampa Bay has its own loose cannon, but Vinny Testaverde used his wheels, not his gun, to dispose of the Viking defense.
Back as Testaverde steps up in the cup, and now he jumps out. He's looking to run, and he is. Down to the 45, to the 40. The crowd loves it. To the 30, to the 25, to the 20. Testaverde going to the 10, to the 5. He runs it for a touchdown. Testaverde, 49 yards.
While the Vikings remained 0 for outdoors and had their playoff noises reduced to a whimper, everyone is loudly singing the praises of the Dallas Cowboys. Seeking their 4th straight victory, which would put them even closer to the playoffs, the resurgent Cowboys vividly displayed the talents that once made them America's team.
Throwing for Irvin, left corner of the end zone. He caught it for a touchdown. It's an unbelievable catch.
While game-breaking offensive plays have been few this season, the Dallas defense has produced many, and this unit has become the backbone of the team. Cowboy fans wished for a running back last Christmas, and this season their present has been a stocking stuffer named Emmitt Smith. Number 22 is a player who can escape the bonds and shackles of any defense. A tiny Houdini who mesmerized Phoenix's defense and scored 4 touchdowns.
And Aikman gives it to Smith. Coming left, falls down, gets back up.
Whoa, yes, yes. Unbelievable run. You gotta be kidding me. I thought he was down.
It was the Cardinals who ended up in straitjackets, enchained by a 41-10 defeat. The Miami Dolphins tie opponents up in knots at Joe Robbie Stadium, and the Seattle Seahawks were bound and gagged by the stifling Miami defense. The The usually plainer than vanilla Dolphin offense added some twirls and swirls and was sprinkled by the rainbows of Dan Marino.
Shotgun, back to pass. He's got time. Scampering out to his right. Being chased by Jacob Green. Gets away. Throws in the end zone.
The Dolphins won 24-17, and if they keep wishing and winning, they will be the home team throughout the playoffs, and that is the greatest Christmas gift an NFL team can receive. September 16, 1990, the Miami Dolphins controlled the ball almost 40 minutes in defeating the Buffalo Bills 30-7. The Bills committed 3 turnovers in this game, falling out of first place for the first time in over 2 years.
That game marked the turning point of the season for the Bills, with several players, Bruce Smith among them, upset about being removed in the fourth quarter. It was also the turning point for the Dolphins, for it was the first time nationally that people began to notice Miami's dramatic improvement. Nick, you know the Dolphins as well as anybody. What do they got to do to win this game?
Well, if they're going to have any chance, like I said earlier, Buffalo's going to feature Thurman Thomas. So that means the pressure is going to be on the linebackers and the defensive line in Miami. Offerdahl and Jeff Cross especially. These guys are going to have to come off the Buffalo Bills blocks, penetrate the line of scrimmage. If Buffalo locks up on them like the Washington Redskins did, then Thurman Thomas will gain 200 yards and Buffalo will waltz to an easy victory.
I disagree. I think the real key to this football game is going to be Dan Marino, because I don't think the Dolphins can run the football on the Buffalo Bills defense. So that means the big question is now going to become, can that Dolphin offensive line protect Danny Marino, even though the Bills defense and Bruce Smith and company knows he has to throw the football? I don't think so.
Wait a minute, am I missing something? Is Marino hurt or something? Marino is the toughest quarterback in the league to sack because of his quick release. Let's go back a couple of weeks ago when they took on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Dolphins were 10 points down in the fourth quarter. You got Reggie White and company over there. Marino brought them the victory. So, with Marino on the field, why don't they have a chance?
Let me tell you something. Bruce Smith and Cornelius Bennett will make a sandwich out of Dan Marino. It's going to be like rye bread on white meat.
Hey, I didn't know we were a delicatessen, but speaking of food, I think the Bills defense is going to feast on the hesitant running Sammy Smith. That means Danny Marino, you better oil that arm up because he's got to throw that football 50 times.
So what? He's done it a lot of times before, and you know what a great competitor he is. So don't write off the Miami Dolphins that easily with Marino in the ball game. When the Buffalo Bills drafted Andre Reed in the 4th round of the 1985 draft, few people expected a perennial Pro Bowler. In this week's cover story, Brian Burwell looks at one of the best catches the Bills ever made.
The image of an NFL wide receiver has always been one of wondrous natural beauty, with their soaring midair dances like some hang-gliding bird, or those graceful strides like a big jungle cat, all melding together into one breathless vision. The average sports fan figures that most professional athletes come by way of their Pro Bowl talents in much the same fashion as those beautiful creatures, naturally, effortlessly, when, of course, nothing could be further from the truth. Take, for example, Buffalo wide receiver Andre Reed, whose path to the Pro Bowl was paved by a very hard road to glory. The road began in Allentown, Pennsylvania, then moved on to tiny Kutztown University, where this undersized high school QB was transformed into a record-setting wide receiver. Sadly, his college coach and the man who first realized his pro potential, Gino Calcagni, never saw Reed achieve his dream. He died in '84, 1 year before Andre turned pro.
It was really a loss for me when he did pass away. He was very instrumental in my success in college and just keeping my mind attuned to the things that I do best. And he was one of the greatest guys I ever knew.
Even without Calcagni, Reed had a goal, the NFL. But in the '85 draft, Jerry Rice, Al Toon, and Eddie Brown all grabbed the first-round headlines. Reed wasn't picked until the 4th round. Yet 6 seasons and a ton of hard work later, he's one of the NFL's best, the most accomplished receiver in Bills history.
It takes a lot of hard work, dedication, determination, discipline. You don't get something handed to you. I believe a lot of the players in the league know that. And, you know, there's only a few guys that get that so-called high standard, you know, that are at the top. And those are the guys that, you know, everybody probably works hard, but God only blesses those that, you know, take it a step further.
And the blessings continue to show up on the stat sheet. Remarkably, every year he's been in the NFL, his receptions and yardage have increased. Now, how's he improved? Well, it's surely one of the most unique methods in the entire NFL.
Now, Andre, I've heard of wide receivers doing all sorts of strange things to improve their skills, but this is a new one on me. Juggling?
I've been doing it for about 7 years, man. And not only does it help your hand-eye coordination, but it will help you look the ball in, and it's a part of the game I take pride in it, and it's gonna definitely help me out in the long run all the time.
Reed is an off-season workaholic. There's endurance and speed training by running up and down hills, perfecting counter strategies to the bump and run, creating new methods to break free of would-be tacklers, and weight training, and the constant repetition of pass patterns.
This spring he came back, probably in the best shape I've ever seen him. Had been out in California, had worked his tail off, came back and just progressed further than he was the year before after he just got back from the Pro Bowl. Or do you think some people might slack up a little bit?
With another solid season already under his belt and the playoffs on the horizon, Andre knows all his dreams are within his grasp.
I can be one of the best to ever play. And that's not being modest, but I feel that. And I think if I keep that in my mind and just shoot for the goals that I do every year, I set every year, and I believe those things can happen to me.
Today, the Pro Bowl has become a common occurrence for this most unlikely football star, and maybe one day the Hall of Fame will follow. And if it does, Andre Reed will know that he reached his final destination the old-fashioned way. He earned it.
Andre Reed is really coming into his own, and with the veteran James Lofton, the Bills have one of the best wide receiver tandems in the league. That combination is one of the reasons the Bills are the highest scoring team in the league. Chris Collinsworth knows a little bit about explosive offenses himself. Chris is now with Bills beat writer Vic Carucci.
Thanks, Lenny. You know, Vic, you've been covering this football team for a long time now. And as I look back at the history of this franchise, it seems like they always have something happen to them late in the season that may cost them a championship. And this year, the same thing. They lose Jim Kelly with a knee injury.
Yeah, the other day at his press conference, Jim said, why me? I go to church, I pray. Why does this happen to me? I think the franchise can say, why us? You have in 1980, playing San Diego, Joe Ferguson with a bad ankle. That cost him. Following year against the Bengals, you have the 30-second clock disaster that cost him at the end. 1988 AFC Championship game against the Bengals. Bruce Smith suffering a knee injury, kills him against Anthony Munoz. Last January, Ronnie Harmon dropping the pass in the end zone at Cleveland. Now this. So you have to wonder, is this franchise have a little bit of a black cloud over its head?
I've got to admit, I kind of enjoyed hearing you tell some of those stories again. Let's talk about Frank Reich. He's going to be thrown into the frying pan now. Does he have the confidence of not only the coaching staff, but his teammates as well?
He has the confidence of the whole organization, and he has to, because last year this team went 3-0 with Frank Reich as a starter. They didn't know anything about him before that game, really. He proved it with those wins, critical wins that kept the Bills on the playoff path.
One of the innovations, though, this year has been the no-huddle offense, and Jim Kelly really had a lot to do with the fact that the Bills are using that right now. Will Marv Levy use the no-huddle with Frank Reich?
I believe you'll see some of it. You may not see it as extensively as you have the last few games, but I think they have to believe Frank Reich can operate it because, hey, look at last year, Monday Night Football against the Rams. Frank's first game as a starter, in those final 2 minutes and 23 seconds, he ran the hurry-up very effectively.
You know, last year we kept hearing about the bickering Bills all the time, and now it's supposed to be the blissful Bills. Is it really that much different last year and this year in that locker room?
It's a world of difference. The players have matured quite a bit. I mean, it isn't that they're a different team because it's the same cast of characters primarily. It's just that they know they have to be together and work together and play together if they're going to be successful. And you know what? The hunger for success, Chris, changes a lot of attitudes.
Yeah, it sure does. Give us a quick prediction. I think I might be able to guess this one, but go ahead and do it anyway.
Well, I have to believe with Frank Reich, he did it last year. I think he'll do it again. I see the Bills winning this ballgame.
Oh, you homer, you. But Vic, we appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
All right, back to you, Nick and Lynn.
Thank you, gentlemen. Nick, we've talked about some of the stars on this Bills offensive unit. Who might be a sleeper in this game?
Lenny, knowing the Miami Dolphins, they're going to double cover Andre Reed in passing situations and look for Thurman Thomas coming out of the backfield. The sleeper could be James Lofton. James Lofton still has big game potential in him, and he could be the guy to turn the game around for the Bills.
You could be absolutely right. I was surprised to learn from the coaches that his speed of 4.3 is the same today at age 30-something it was his rookie year. Last week, there was plenty of holiday cheer in the 3 NFL cities that wrapped up playoff spots as early Christmas presents for their fans.
In rainy Foxborough, there was little the struggling Patriots could do to stem the inexorable tide of the playoff-hungry Washington Redskins, who rode on the waves churned by 1,000-yard rusher Ernest Byner. Byner splashed his way for 1 score, and New England gift-wrapped another touchdown for Washington linebacker Kurt Govea, number 54, as the Redskins ended their 1-year drought from postseason, sewing up a soggy but welcomed NFC playoff berth. The Redskins were joined a day later by the Eagles, the team that's supposedly just the one-man army of Randall Cunningham. But against the Packers, Randall shared the spotlight with multi-talented Keith Byers, number 41.
It's a pitch to Byers, a pass for Tony. He leaps and makes a great catch for a touchdown. Cunningham dropping back again. He's looking. He's throwing it for the end zone. Touchdown as he goes by Keith Byers.
I tell you, this Byers turned into a great receiver, Jim.
But true to form, Randall, as usual, soared above all the rest.
Cunningham on the shotgun. He's starting to run. Leaps into the end zone. Touchdown, Cunningham! Randall running for the touchdown. And that should lock it up. It's official. For the 3rd year in a row, the Eagles are flying to the playoffs.
Cunningham has a realistic chance to become the first NFL quarterback ever to rush for 1,000 yards. With a playoff spot secure, Randall just might take a run at that record. Playoffs have also been on the minds of LA fans who are hoping Santa makes it a silver and black Christmas. But against the Bengals, it appeared St. Nick had just put a lump of coal in the Raiders' stocking.
Play action fake. Boomer drifting out to his left. Has some room to run, but he looks upfield. Now he throws it way downfield into the end zone. Who has the ball? Touchdown. Amidst 5 men. Coming up with the ball was Tim McGee.
Cincinnati took an early lead and even appeared to have Bo Jackson under wraps thanks to the defensive efforts of linebacker James Francis, number 50. But just like his commercials, Bo seems to be everywhere at once. Even when Francis thought he had Bo in his grasp, the best-selling author and pitchman escaped to ring up another payday.
Bo trying to get around the left side. There's too much humanity there. He reverses, coming back to the right, gets a great comeback block. Starts up the field of the 15 to the 20, 25. It's a foot race. Will anybody catch him? He's at the Cincinnati 30, the 20, the 10. He is caught on the 1-yard line. Holy Toledo.
Then another Raider Heisman winner got into the act.
The pass down the middle, wide open. It's Brown at the 30, streaks to the 20. He's at the 10. They won't get him. Touchdown, Raiders.
LA's victory dealt the Bengals a serious blow to their postseason hopes while fulfilling the most fervent Yuletide wish of every Raider fan. For the first time since 1985, the Silver and Black are back in the playoffs. Coming up, Where Are They Now spotlights the brothers who brought soccer-style kicking to the NFL, the Gogolaks. We'll have highlights of the first Broncos victory in nearly 2 months. And on Pigskin Potpourri, the Buffalo Bills give us their Christmas wish list.
I know a couple of Christmas wishes high on the Bills' priority list. One, a speedy recovery for their quarterback Jim Kelly, and secondly, home field advantage throughout the playoffs. I also know what is high on the list of Gary Myers each and every week the year round. That is an exciting story to cover. Gary, this week is injured quarterbacks. How about Jim Kelly? What have you heard about him?
Well, Lenny, the Bills doctor said earlier this week that Kelly both had a partial tear of the medial collateral ligament and a small tear of cartilage in the back of his left knee. Now, the doctor said that he'll be able to practice in 3 weeks and play in 4 weeks, which means if the Bills can beat the Dolphins on Sunday and get the bye in the first round of the playoffs, Kelly could be back for Buffalo's first playoff game. But I think that's really an optimistic prognosis.
Optimistic? I don't think so. I had the very same injury that Jim has. I was back in 4 games, and he's tougher than I am, so He's going to be back. All right, if Kelly can't start, that means that Frank Reich is going to. I talked to Marv Levy earlier in this program, and he has a lot of confidence in Frank Reich. Have you heard anything differently?
No, as a matter of fact, the whole organization, from the players to general manager Bill Polian, have a lot of confidence in Frank Reich. After last season, Polian gave Reich a 5-year contract for $3.25 million. This despite the fact he'd only thrown 107 passes in 5 years.
$3.25 million, and they say playing backup quarterback's a bad deal? No way. Hey, Sims went down, DeBerg went down, Kosar went down, Harbaugh went down. Maybe now the teams are looking at their priority list and saying, hey, quarterbacks may be a little higher than we thought. If so, who are some of the quarterbacks coming out that we should look for?
Well, both the National Combine and Blesto held their annual meetings last week, and they ranked the players position by position. The top quarterback on the list was Dan McGuire from San Diego State, followed by Craig Erickson from Miami, Paul Justin from Arizona State, and Don Hollis from Rice. But the player a lot of the teams are talking about is David Klinger from Houston, who's only a junior. If he comes out, he could be the first quarterback taken.
Now, that brings up something that's very sensitive, both the National Football League and the colleges, and that is juniors becoming eligible for the draft. Is there anything new on that?
Well, after last season, Paul Tagliabue moved up the deadline for juniors to declare from the draft from March 22nd to February 1st. This was to help the colleges because the National Letter of Intent Day is the second Wednesday in February. Now the colleges want it moved up to January 15th to further help recruiting. They also figure that will give the agents less time to be on campuses trying to convince juniors to turn pro.
I guess nobody likes agents anymore, do they? Let's talk about something we've talked about before. I'm sure we're going to talk about again: instant replay. It's been in existence 5 years. Now, are there any of those people out there who were in favor of it, now after 5 years say, hey, let's get rid of it?
Well, Lenny, I've learned it's impossible to predict in December how teams are going to vote in March. But Bill Polian, the Bills general manager, is on the competition committee. Last year, he voted for instant replay. This year, he says he's going to vote against it. He says too many glitches, too many whistles have been blown before the fumble, too many the ground caused the fumble. He says it's more of a detriment than a help. I think a lot of teams feel that way now.
We've been saying that for a long time, haven't we? Gary, wish you a happy holiday season. See you again next week.
Thank you, Lynn.
25 years ago, a place kicker was an afterthought, the last stop for an aging position player. Today, kicking has evolved into a specialized skill well recognized in the National Football League. In this week's Where Are They Now, Kurt Gowdy takes a look at the Gogolak brothers, who changed forever the long-established way of kicking a football.
My father was the first one he always had dreams and hopes for his kids, and he was the one who would say to us, now see that fellow over there that's kicking? I mean, you can do better than that. You guys could do better than that next year. Peter really was the trailblazer. I sort of followed along, and but it's true back then. Now it seems so natural. Nobody thinks about it twice. So there's not a straight-on kicker left in the NFL.
Charlie, we should have been smart. We should have patented this kick.
Yeah.
And every time, 26 kickers in the National Football League, every time they come in, we should get a little royalty out of this.
Brothers Peter and Charlie Gogolak were not only the NFL's first soccer-style kickers, but also among the best. After spending 2 seasons with the Buffalo Bills in the AFL, Peter joined the New York Giants in 1966 and went on to become the team's all-time leading scorer. Following Peter's instep, Charlie too joined the NFL in 1966. He was with the Washington Redskins as the first-place kicker in league history to be drafted in the first round. While success would eventually come to both Charlie and Peter, in the beginning, there were those who doubted the accuracy and safety of their kicking style.
I lined up in this 45-degree angle, and I never forget the kind of a frightful expression on the holder's face. He says, Gogolak, you know, in this country, you know, we line up straight, and you're supposed to kick the ball straight through the uprights. And if you line up in this manner, you know, you're going to kick the ball into the stands, but even if you miss the ball, you know, kick me, you know where.
That's going to run?
There's a ball right here. No, listen, there's a ball right here. Ooh.
Let's pull the hamstring.
To this day, the brothers Gogolak remain close. Perhaps that has something to do with their upbringing.
Good shot.
Charlie and Peter were born in Hungary, and along with their mother and father, who was a respected dentist, the family escaped from Budapest just before Russian tanks moved into the city in 1956. After settling in upstate New York, the Gogolaks excelled in both sports and academics, with Peter eventually graduating from Cornell and Charlie from Princeton. That early success followed the Gogolaks after football, too. For today, Charlie's a vice president of institutional sales for the Kidder Peabody Company in Boston.
What time, Bobby? Hey, Robin, good morning. We sold those St. Charles 8 1/4s late yesterday.
As a vice president in the financial printing department for the R.R. Donnelly Company in New York, Peter does extremely well, too. And both brothers are thankful for the chances their adopted country has given them.
I consider myself always very fortunate to come to this country. A lot of people tried to come and they couldn't make it, and we had the good fortune to come here. And really, truly, this is a land of opportunities.
So we appreciate the freedoms that this country has given us in no small way.
And we've been fortunate in our sports career and also in our business careers. And so really the bottom line is we can't complain.
Boy, I remember the Gogolak brothers. And Chris, I want to tell you about one of those brothers, Pete Gogolak.
Oh, here we go. Sounds like another story from the Stone Age.
Oh, yes, young man, listen to this. Pete Gogolak not only was instrumental in paving the way for soccer-style kickers, but he was very important in forming the merger between the American League and the National Football League, because in the early days, the leagues didn't bother with each other's players, but the Giants finally signed one, Pete Gogolak, from the Bills when he was under contract. After that, pro football got very interesting.
You know who was chomping at the bit just waiting for something like that to happen, Lenny? Yes, Al Davis. As soon as that happened, Al Davis got all the AFL owners together, and they said, let's go out and sign all the starting quarterbacks on the NFL teams. They signed Robin Gabriel and John Brody, and as soon as that happened, yes, the merger took place.
You know, I just love it when you guys give us these little history lessons like that. I mean, really, it's inside the NFL at its very finest.
Hey,
really.
I've had another story about a former Bill, Jack Kemp. You know, he's a real big shot in the White House now, so I got some Jack Kemp stories.
Nick, listen to me. Read my lips. No more stories.
Oh, sure. I want to hear the tune you're going to be singing when your 8-month-old daughter, Katie, is old enough to listen and understand. She'll have to endure your old war stories about how the Bengals could have won a couple of more Super Bowls had they thrown the ball to you because you were always open.
She's already heard all those stories, believe me.
Well, I can believe you that, but there's nothing like talking about some of the good old times. In the NFL, deja vu occurs in many forms. For some teams and players, it means recapturing former glory. For others, it may be a flashback to early season offensive woes.
It wasn't until the emergence of Eric Green in Week 5 that the Steelers were able to score an offensive touchdown at all this season. But last Sunday, even the Statue of Liberty couldn't guide his team to the end zone. Fortunately for Pittsburgh, its flashback to early season form was matched by an equally woeful performance by the Saints.
Here's to Finnerty again, and Finnerty stacked up. The ball is fumbled into the end zone and recovered by the Steelers. You betcha!
There were no touchdowns, but a key touchback and one game-winning field goal.
The ball is down. The kick by Anderson. It is good.
The guy is incredible with 3
If the Steelers have resumed their lame offensive ways, at least they can always count on Gary Anderson's strong leg. As for the Jets, they get weak in the knees reminiscing about the glory days of Hall of Fame quarterback Joe Namath. These days, what they've been trying to pass off as a passing game has been hardly memorable. Wide receiver Al Toon and quarterback Ken O'Brien each got a new perspective on an old Jets play, the incompletion, and that made what followed all the more frustrating.
Stark with his hands outstretched, takes a good snap from Pat Beach. Now he's going to throw the pass, completed in the sideline. It goes to the 35, down to the 30, Mike Pryor to the 20, to the 15, to the 10, and inside before he finally...
Hunter Roan Stark's first ever completion and safety Mike Pryor's first career reception gave new life to the Colts offense.
Hester starts in motion right to left. Jeff drops to throw, sets, looks, throws one over the middle. Brooks is there. And touchdown clearance.
Indianapolis received a further boost from an old source, Eric Dickerson. Dickerson displayed flashes of his former All-Pro self, amassing a season-high 162 yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns. If Dickerson can continue to recreate his past, then his beleaguered head coach Ron Meyer may yet have a future in Indy. In Denver, at least for the present, Dan Reeves has weathered a disastrous season unharmed and unthreatened by the axe. Sadly for him, though, everyone else in Denver has been getting hammered. In the past, the Broncos had always made the most of their talents, but in 1990, even their best efforts have gone to waste. Vance Johnson was out of bounds by mere inches, but aside from that, John Elway and the Broncos were out of character by an entire season.
Way to throw, looks left, backpedals, throws, caught, touchdown, Denver! To throw, looks left, scrambles left, gonna run, runs to the 30, pulls up, throws to the end zone, hit, caught, touchdown, Denver! Michael Young.
Denver soared toward its first win in 8 weeks, while the Chargers slid back in time to their old blundering ways.
Here is Tolliver, back to throw, looks right, throws, tight end Walker, got it, dives to the goal line, he fumbled the ball. I think it's a touchdown. I think we're gonna get instant replay.
More a flashback than an instant replay, the Chargers' loss turned back the clocks on the AFC West and set back San Diego's playoff hopes another year. It had been a while since the Broncos had enjoyed a taste of their past, and in Cleveland, suiting up for the Browns isn't what it used to be either. The Cleveland Indians had won a game in Municipal Stadium more recently than the Browns had. But they couldn't lose to a team that hadn't won in 17 straight road games, did they?
Intercepted by Dion.
It looked grim until Kevin Mack gave Cleveland its first lead in 4 weeks.
Our handoff back up the middle to the goal line, and he puts the ball.
You could just see the years fading from Jim Schaffner's face as number 92 Michael Dean Perry recorded his first multi-sack game since week 2. Perry and the Browns netted 8 sacks in all, and the Browns looked like their old selves.
Browns are getting fired up a little.
Millen in trouble again, brought down from behind by Michael Dean.
And in the dog pound, those that time forgot enjoyed going back in time for a day.
Niagara Falls isn't the only natural wonder of the world here in upstate New York. Bills defensive end Bruce Smith has 19 sacks already and lays claim to be the best defensive player in the game today. Look for a great matchup this Sunday when the league's best pass rusher goes against the toughest man to sack, Miami's Dan Marino. Bruce Smith is with Nick now to talk about this matchup.
Thank you, Lenny. Bruce, when Jim Kelly went down, you said matter-of-factly that the game is now in the hands of the defense. Is this how you really feel?
Well, definitely. We had to pick up the slack. Last year, we had a similar situation in which Jim went down, and we won 3 ball games without him. We're going to miss him, but special teams and defensively, we're going to have to rise to the occasion.
I want to take you back to the first game against the Dolphins down in Miami. They really handled you guys pretty easily. Is there a revenge factor here?
Well, definitely. I think the fact that we're a team that plays in the colder weather, going down to Miami, I think they took advantage of that, and at the same time, we didn't know what defensive fronts to play against Miami.
Personally in that ball game, I mean, I looked at the statistics, and I didn't see Bruce Smith with a sack. Now, you have a couple rookies, Sims and Webb, playing on that left side. Are you chomping at the bit to get up against those guys?
Well, I'm looking forward to playing against those guys again. But at the same time, I don't care who you put in front of Dan Marino. With his release and his ability to read defenses, it really helps out that offensive unit.
Are you guys going to do anything differently, or have you prepared differently than you did against them in the first game?
No, we're going to go back to our base fronts and try and stop the run, and then we'll take the pass into consideration when they start doing it. So we're really looking forward to it.
When they start doing it, you don't think Danny Marino's going to come out throwing the ball 50 times? I can't imagine you're not going to have your ears pinned back, just ready to go at Danny almost the whole game.
Well, they're not going to be the most perfect conditions here in Buffalo, so you have to figure they're going to have to try and establish the run and then start passing the ball.
In that first ball game against Miami, after that game, you came out and you blasted, I thought it was Marv Levy, by saying that he quit on you guys. He took the first unit out and gave up on the ball game. Marv came out and said, hey, it was his decision, and he's the coach, and he'll make those decisions. Do you think when he asserted himself that it sort of turned the entire season around for you guys?
Well, I think that was a situation where I didn't blast Marv Levy. I just came out and said, we as a unit gave up. It was a situation where a lot of tempers were flaring, and we didn't know how to handle it at that point in time, but I think it worked out for the best for us.
Did you guys kind of clean the air out?
Oh, definitely,
clear the air, right?
definitely.
And so it kind of gave you a different perspective?
It really did, and we went on a tremendous winning streak, and we're very happy with our season right now.
Let's talk about Danny Marino and that great release. Now, you're the defensive end. Does it frustrate you to almost get to him, that ball's released? And how are you going to change his timing?
Well, it really does, but if you put pressure on him, he will get rid of the football, and that's the situation that we're going to have to do. And if we stop him, that means we still get off the field anyway, even though we don't get the sack.
Well, congratulations on having a great year. I know you need 3 more to break Gastineau's record, and I think that's what you're looking forward to, and best of luck the rest of the year.
Thanks a lot.
Back to you, Lenny and Chris.
Thanks, gentlemen. Chris, last week before the Giants game, Bruce Smith said he was the best defensive player in the league. You agree with him?
I sure do. I think Bruce Smith right now is the very best at his position and maybe the best defensive player that there is right now. I don't think that he really needs to be the one that's saying it. I know he's in a small market up here in Buffalo, but enough people respect Bruce Smith that he doesn't have to come out and make a statement like he did last week.
You know, I asked Buck Buchanan, my ex-teammate, if he was, and he said yes, and that's good enough for me. Everyone knows Buffalo is north, but it's not quite as far north as the North Pole. But in this week's Pigskin Potpourri, we asked the Bills what they asked from old St. Nick. No, not our Nick, but the one who lives even north of here.
This is Mitch Farrat. You probably see me on the sidelines with my war paint on, but what I really want for Christmas is world peace.
I'd love to have MVP for a Christmas present. Thanks a lot.
What would I like for Christmas? I'm the man with everything. I mean, I can't even imagine what I could want for Christmas. I've got it all. So, thanks, Henry.
Merry Christmas to everyone out there. Happy birthday, Jesus. Merry Christmas.
My holiday wish is I wish I could grow a beard so that everyone would quit mistaking me for a choir boy. Merry Christmas.
First thing I want for Christmas, Santa, remember those foot-long lists that my little boys sent you? Can you please fill it out so they get everything that they want? And the second thing, I want Chris Collinsworth to get that Super Bowl ring so they can quit worrying Nick and Len about him.
My holiday wish is that Chris Collinsworth will do a little better on his picks these last 2 weeks so that when he picks us to go to the Super Bowl, at least he'll have a little credibility behind him. And I just wanted to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah and everyone else a happy holiday season.
Well, we know what the wishes of the Buffalo Bills happen to be. I'd like your wish list, gentlemen. I know you had a birthday. You probably had all the presents you need.
No, not really. It's the first time I ever got a fountain.
A what?
For a fountain. You know one of those things that bubbles water? That's what I got for my birthday.
That's good. What'd you do with it?
I still in the yard. But I'll tell you what I want. I wish someone would give $10 million to the Miami Project to cure paralysis. That's my wish.
Oh, here.
That's a great wish right there. You know what my wish is? I want to get a few games closer in the pick segment. I'm getting destroyed. I'm going backwards.
I think you and I are thinking along the same lines because this guy is burying us. Take a look what he did last week, folks.
Hey, I was
Bona County 12-2. Overall for the season, a commanding lead. Chris, where are you down there?
How can I be in last place?
I don't understand.
You're still a rookie,
You've even caught me. That's impossible. That's such a big lead.
You're a rookie.
Let's take a look at some of the games that we all agree on. We agreed Detroit over Green Bay, Pittsburgh over Cleveland, the Jets downing New England, San Francisco defeating New Orleans, the Rams over Atlanta, and Seattle over Denver. Now let's take a look at the rest of the games. And Nick, you're on a roll right now. You take the first one, the Raiders at Minnesota.
I think it's going to be a tough game. I think Wade Wilson is back for the Minnesota Vikings. That means they're going to play well. But I like my man, Bo Jackson. He's looking great. I like the Raiders.
Well, here's my first upset of the week coming up right here. I like the Minnesota Vikings if they will play Wade Wilson for an entire football game from beginning to end. I think he's the man that can win that football game for them.
Hey, Bo Jackson, you're right. He has come to the front, and he's your man now. I see that. Yeah, you're jumping on the bandwagon. I can understand that. I like the Raiders. Next up, we've got Washington at Indianapolis. Chris,
here
we
go. Second upset.
All right.
So right now I'm trying to make up a little ground.
All
here.
right, Chris.
But the Indianapolis Colts defense all season long has just been tremendous. They're not that talented a group, but they really play hard. Jeff George and Eric Dickerson are starting to come on. I like the Colts.
Dream along with me. Washington Redskins ripping, and the posse are coming, the Redskins.
He said that almost with a straight face. He's trying to catch up. There is no way in the world. It's got to be Washington. All right, next up we got Houston at Cincinnati.
Well, Cincinnati, they look bad against the Raiders. What do you know? How do you know what team's going to show up this week, although they're playing at home? But how could you go against Warren Moon? I like the Oilers.
Well, the Bengals will be a little healthier this week than they were last week, but Warren Moon was absolutely outstanding. Almost ready to change my mind about the run and shoot, but not quite yet, never.
I saw Warren Moon's performance last week, gentlemen. That was the finest performance I have ever seen, and against a good Kansas City defensive unit. I am going with Houston. We got Dallas at Philadelphia, Chris.
Well, Dallas is playing about as well as any team in football right now, but Philadelphia and Randall Cunningham at home, just too strong. I like the Eagles.
Well, you're picking against your Gator, Emmitt Smith. I can't believe it. Jimmy Johnson has them rolling, but Buddy Ryan playing at home. Randall Cunningham and that defense too tough.
You hit it on the Randall Cunningham and the defense. I like the Eagles as well. Next up, we've got Kansas City at San Diego.
You know, Marion Butts is not going to play in this game. I just think San Diego's a very ordinary team. Kansas City, I don't think really relies on Steve DeBerg that much. The defense will come alive this week. I like Kansas City.
You're going to find out this week just how much Kansas City relies on Steve DeBerg. What a great year he's had down there. I don't think they can beat San Diego without him.
They rely on Steve DeBerg, and he may play. He is about as gutsy as guy. The bone was sticking out of his little pinky, man, and they pulled that back in. He came back in the ballgame. I'm going with Kansas City. We've got the Giants at Phoenix.
Well, no Phil Simms in this one, but the Giants' defense still too strong. I like the Giants.
I mean, you're not picking Phoenix in an upset. I mean, they played them real close the last time. Hey, I like Jeff Hostetler and the defense of the Giants.
Well, I like the Giants, but I don't know how you can go against them. All right, next up. Tampa Bay at Chicago.
Hey, Chicago, it looks like it's going to be Thomas or it's going to be Willis, the rookie out of Florida State. I don't know. But they still have to play Chicago's defense. Testaverde, well, the balloon will burst for Tampa Bay. I like Chicago.
Well, Vinny Testaverde may come out and run the wishbone the way he ran that football last week. But I think Chicago at home is too tough. I'll take Chicago.
No, I don't think the wishbone. He's too tall. There's too much of a target against him. They're going to be going in Chicago where it may be a little cooler than it is in Tampa Bay. I like Chicago. All right. Big Sunday game, Miami right here against Buffalo. Chris, who do you like?
Well, we've been talking about it all day. I just think the defense of the Buffalo Bills is going to shut down the running game, and Dan Marino in the cold weather won't be able to get it going. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills.
You know, Miami's had trouble against quality running backs all year long.
Bowl 25. Enter HBO's Inside the NFL Super Bowl sweepstakes, and you and a friend could be Tampa-bound with all expenses paid. And if you're thinking about a tailgate party, plan for two, because our grand prize winner will experience Farfernugget in his and hers 1991 Volkswagen Golfs. To enter, write your name, address, and phone number on a postcard and send it to HBO Super Bowl Sweepstakes, Post Office Box 1496, Clifton, New Jersey 07013. Over 500 other prizes include official NFL team jackets, Super Bowl sweaters, HBO baseball caps, and the weekly prize, an HBO sports bag. So join hosts Len Dawson, Nick Bonaconti, and Chris Collinsworth for complete analysis of every game every week. Win it all. A trip to the Super Bowl and a pair of 1991 Volkswagen Golfs in HBO's Inside the NFL Super Bowl Sweepstakes.